Class A, another thing we need to consider when deciding between the preterite and the imperfect are certain verbs and verb phrases that change their meanings when they are used in either the preterite or the imperfect. By knowing what these verbs mean in these tenses, it can help us decide which tense we want to use. Don't forget, there are a few other things that we need to be learning and memorizing to help us decide between which tense to use, like the common time expressions used with the preterite. So when you see these, so we need to know them and recognize them and know what they mean, we will use the preterite. When we see these, we will know that we will probably use the imperfect. So we also need to know these and recognize them and put them into our brain files. And we also talked about yesterday the reasons to use the preterite and the imperfect. I don't know why I said yesterday, in the last set of notes, depending on when you took them. Okay, so the new information that we need is to talk about certain verbs that change their meanings. So, saber is one of them, and it changes its meaning because in the imperfect, it is used to say what someone knew or used to know when it pertains to facts or information, but for the preterite, you have to turn it into a one-time thing. So in the preterite, it means found out or realized for the first time. So depending on what you want to say depends on which tense of the preterite and the imperfect you will use. Another verb that changes its meaning, of course, if saber means to know and conocer means to know, they're both going to have different meanings in which tense. And conocer in the imperfect will also mean new, but of course you know it's not with facts and info, it is with people, places, or concepts. And yes, I do want you to write the part that's in gray as well. But for the preterite, we have to turn it into a one-time thing, and so it means met or saw for the first time. And these, of course, are the definitions that I will need you to use within this unit and from now on to show that you have learned this lesson. So these are the things I will expect you to say when you see them in these tenses. Another verb that changes its meaning, depending on which tense you use it in, is querer. And in the preterite, it means, in the preterite, it's almost always followed by the infinitive. It means that you had an urge at the moment to do something. And in the imperfect, it doesn't matter if no is in front of it or not. It means that someone used to want something or didn't used to want something. And in the preterite, it means something different if you put no in front of it. And again, it's usually followed by an infinitive. So again, these are big indicators of when you see querer followed by the infinitive that you'll probably want to use the preterite. And what does it mean if you have no in front of it in the preterite? It means you refuse to do something. So this one means you had an urge at the moment to do something, and if you put no in front of it, it means that you refused. If you just want to say someone wanted, then you would use the imperfect. Poder. Again, in the imperfect, it doesn't matter if you have no in front of it or not, but in the preterite, it does. Poder in the preterite means that you, because poder means to can, and it even means that you succeeded in the preterite. So you could and did. You succeeded. And in the imperfect, it means you were able to do something or not, or you could. If you put no in front of it in the preterite, again, we need to turn that into a one-moment thing. It means that you couldn't and failed. What else do we have that changes? Tener is another verb that changes its meaning depending on the tense that it is in. If you use in the imperfect, that's ongoing, and that just means that you had something or used to have something. But if you want to turn it into that in the moment thing for the preterite, it means that you got something at that moment. You began having it. And in the imperfect, used to have or had something. So these are a couple of verbs that change their meanings depending on which tense you use them in. And then on my next slide here, we have a couple of verb phrases that change their meanings. And they are ir plus a plus infinitive in the imperfect. And notice there is not a side to it on the preterite side. It means, and we already have this in our notes, it's used to say what someone was going to do. And it is not used in the preterite. So if you ever see this phrase, it's another big fat clue or indicator that you're going to put that verb in the imperfect. Ir will go in the imperfect. And then we have two phrases on the preterite side that use ponerse. as you know, poner means to put, place, or set. Poner se on its own means to put, place, or set something on yourself, so like to put on. But if you have poner se plus an adjective, like a feelings or emotion adjective, it means became. She became happy. And that goes back to, let me just flip back real quick, to these emotional reactions or changes. If you just want to say that someone was happy, that would be the imperfect because that's an internal feeling or emotion and description. Someone was happy. But if you want to say someone became happy when they got a puppy, that would be an emotional reaction or change, which would make it the preterite. And let's go back. So that's why poner se plus adjective is only used in the preterite, and it means became happy, became sad. And then a totally different phrase that still uses poner se is a plus infinitive, which means that someone started or began to do something. And because the preterite is used to say that something started, began, ended, or was completed, this phrase is also only used in the preterite and does not have an imperfect meaning. So here are some more big fat clues of when to use the preterite versus the imperfect that you should be knowing and learning and recognizing so that you can choose the right tense to tell stories, which is exactly what we will be doing in this unit and on the next quiz, which is actually a test because it is our midterm. So, some food for thought. Good job.